All right, we are
Probably not,
unmuted.
So, all right, good evening.
That's true.
We now have a quorum, so we're gonna call to order this meeting. This meeting is being recorded by the Economic Development Committee. If any other person present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. And nobody is here, so nobody is recording
Unless someone's recording online.
unless somebody's recording online. Anybody recording online? No. Okay. Roll call members. I am present, Counselor Healy, Counselor Mastrotero, Counselor Gordon,
Here,
Counselor Bullock informed me she might be late or absent. And Counselor Minhas is not online yet, so I'll leave that one question mark for now. Next item is approval of minutes, February 11th, 2025. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
so moved.
Perfect. And we don't need to do a roll call vote because Counselor Minhas isn't online, so can Counselor Gordon?
Wait, I thought you just said we don't need to do a roll call vote.
Or sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
There we go. Thanks.
No worries.
Approval minutes. The next item on the agenda is public comment, and we don't have anybody in here. Would anybody online? If you do, raise your hand, please. All right,
Counselor,
John Garrett. You're muted still, I think.
not muted. We might need to turn it up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. I'm on baby wrangling duty tonight, so I just wanted to briefly say sorry, John Garrett, 93 Hope Street. Thrilled about the amendments going forward. I'm really very pleased that this is something we're doing. And, again, in the spirit of compromise, the mixed use first floor residential one, I'm excited to see that hopefully pass the full council. I think if there are refinements to the 50-50 number that could happen, that would be fabulous. But ultimately, I just want to say, like, all of this, I'm glad that is happening. And again, I just want to thank Councilor Mastrotero in particular for putting the energy and the effort into making this all happen. So again, the first floor piece with the 50-50, I definitely think some refinements can happen with that. But I would love to talk more about it, but I got to go grab a baby. So I will be listening to the whole meeting, but maybe off camera so you don't see me bouncing around. But thank you for the moment.
Thank you. And for the record, it looks like Counselor Minhas is now present.
I'm admitting someone whose name is iPhone, so I'm just noting that I don't actually know who that is.
Okay. For those of you who just joined us from the public, if you would like to comment, please raise your hand. We're going to go to Al Norman next, and please state your name and address.
You're muted,
You're
Al.
muted still.
Hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, sorry about that. I have 4 quick comments I'd like to make. Number one,
Just name and address, Al.
I'm sorry, to Al Norman, 21 Grinnell Street. First comment is on the BWC Millbrook proposal for a pilot agreement. I'm very pleased to see a pilot agreement from anywhere. I do want to point out, though, that this project at 1.86 megawatts, I'm estimating that it's worth being valued at about $795,000 because it's only producing $15,345 a year, which over 20 years is $306,000. This is a kind of pocket change for this company. I don't know why it's so low, but I just want to tell you that's a problem. And secondly, no one seems to be asking what kind of battery storage is going to be in this project. Is it lithium ion? And if so, what kind of lithium ion? Because otherwise you might want to send alarm out to your fire department that we'd have big problems ahead. Second comment on the height issue. I don't really understand why we're raising the height from 50 to 80 in CC and 50 to 60 in GC. I don't know where those figures came from. I don't know what kind of background study was done to say that that makes sense. But I do want to urge you to put something in this amendment that you will not raise the heights in any residential district, whether it's RA, RB, RC, or SR. No more heights in those districts. It's just not appropriate. No one in Greenfield is asking for it. No one in Greenfield has been asked for it. So I don't care what you do with the CC or GC. I see no proof that this is going to work for any buildings in the downtown because nobody knows whether they can even support additional floors. Make it floors instead of height, by the way. Third comment on the ADUs. The state has told me that, quote, it is a local option whether to, of a municipality, whether to allow more than one ADU per lot. I want to repeat that. It is a local option whether to allow more than one ADU per lot. If you pass a one ADU per lot, you don't need to have special permits because there won't be a second or a third ADU. But if you leave second and third ADUs in there, you're going to have special permits, you're going to have site plan, you're going to have a mess. I don't know why you would want to add more than one ADU. And I would just remind you what was said at one of the hearings, actually in the paper recently. Well, what do you do if you use one of these homes for your mom and then mom dies? What do you do with it? Well, all of a sudden you're a landlord and you don't want to be. So I would caution people, you better be careful about bringing in an in-law apartment under these rules. And finally, under site plan review, the planning board has said nothing at all about the comments that I made about how to make the site plan more available to citizens, to allow citizens to ask comments of developers through the chair. And I would also urge you to make public all comments that are submitted to the chair. I have no idea how many people wrote to you saying that they don't like some of these things. You never talk about them, you never publish them. It's all hidden. I've asked the mayor to stop this practice. I've asked President Wondolowski to stop this practice. Please make them public. This is not appropriate for a town that's trying to be transparent to never talk about what citizens tell you. So those are my comments for this evening. I hope they have some value to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Al. Anybody else online that would like to publicly comment? Please raise your hand. And I am not seeing anybody else. So we're going to close the public comment. So the first motion we have on the order is order number FY 25-053. The city council, upon recommendation of Mayor Disorder, in order to approve Mayor Disorder to enter into the pilot agreement with BWC Millbrook LLC related to the solar farm development located at 1245 Burniston Road. Move that it be ordered the city council approves Mayor Disorder to enter into this pilot agreement with the BWC Millbrook LLC related to the solar farm development located at 1245 Burniston Road. So the history behind this is there is a solar development going in off of Burniston Road. It's very common in these renewable sectors when they develop a property in lieu of paying taxes, they'll enter a pilot agreement that sets forth payment terms. And this one, it happens to be for 20 years. It's about a little over 15,345 per year for 20 years. It is subject to be reevaluated if you read the fine print about if it's not producing as much as they say it is. It's based on how many megawatts they're actually producing, right? This is pretty common. I'm going to give my opinion and I'll open up to councilors. I think this is good for the city. I think it's revenue we're not getting for that land right now, minus what we're getting in property taxes, which based on the land value would probably be somewhere around $8,000 a year. So it's double what we're getting currently. So I am in favor of this, but I'm going to open it up to councilors that want to talk about this.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Norman and with you, Councilor Healy, that pilots are all too rare. So I'm glad to see that we're doing something and appreciate the mayor negotiating this agreement. I will admit that I don't have the technical expertise to read through all the fine print and actually understand what it's telling me. So yeah, any light that you can shed on it Counselor Healy, is much appreciated because I know that this is your field. But I think that it's certainly worth doing, and I trust that the mayor has done her due diligence and, you know, making sure that the property is being used appropriately and that we're getting the best that we can for the city. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you.
I'm not sure. I have the property card, for that. 1245 Burgess Road. I'm not sure if that's been split yet, because, there's a home on that lot. I think maybe even two, there's the business, the truck cat business. What's the value of those buildings? I mean, it's a question to ask. I mean, the land value is 300 and some odd thousand dollars. I just had it. I do about that before. Land value in 2020, tax year 25, it's $349,700. Building value is another 530, almost $536,000. So my only question is that 15,000 and change that we'll be getting every year, that's for 20 years. Property value is going to go up. I mean, right now it's a gain, but in 10 years, will it be a gain? So that's my only question. Is in the long run, is it going to outweigh the property taxes? That's a mystery, right?
Right.
Anybody got any feedback?
I will say typically when a developer, the solar developer, renewable energy developer enters an agreement with a landowner, there is a lease agreement and they're leasing the land for a period of time. So they're probably doing a 20-year
It
lease.
is, it's on there.
I'm sure that that lease area has been defined in their lease agreement. Not sure that you need to subdivide the parcel for a lease
Well, I
agreement.
think there was talk of that then something, I think Randy had mentioned that to me,
Okay,
but I haven't seen a new property cards at this point, if that's been split.
They may have that at conservation. This land had to go through conservation because of proximity to wetlands.
So. I mean, I'm gonna vote for it. I don't know what kind of, how risky it is, or if there's any risk at all. As long as there's a net gain, I'm cool with it, so.
thank you. I think one thing we might be able to do after this meeting is just follow up with the assessor, Conservation Commission, and maybe Mr. Torog, just to see if it was subdivided, but my past experience says they just entered a land lease. They defined some limits with Northings and Eastings and said, we're leasing this land off here for 20 years. And then we'll remove our panels at the end and you get your land back. So, we could certainly look into that.
Yeah, I support it as well. It's not like the greatest amount of money, but we're getting something, which is good. I did have that same concern as Michael did, but I guess if it's been evaluated and the lease is probably 20 years as well, then that makes sense.
Thank you. Any other comments on this before we take a roll call vote? No? Okay. PT. Counselor Mastroterra,
Yes.
Counselor Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas,
Yes.
and I am also in favor, so that makes it unanimous. All right, the next item on the agenda is the zoning amendment, section 200-14, Central Commercial District, subsection B, uses and permitted, paragraph 18. So let's go over that. So that is order number FY 25048. City Council moved that it be ordered that the City Council of Greenfield amends the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning, section 14, Central Commercial District, subsection B, uses permitted, paragraph 18, by adding language in bold to read as follows. Central Commercial District of the zoning ordinance to require that all multifamily developments within the Central Commercial District be mixed residential and business uses, so that it reads as follows. Uses permitted. Multifamily dwellings in accordance with 200-40 subsections B 1, 4 through 9. All multifamily developments within the Central Commercial District should be mixed residential use or business use. And further amends that the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in the order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. So we had a pretty good joint meeting with the planning board about this last week. One concern that came up in this was how we were eliminating properties off of the main strips of Federal Street, Main Street, et cetera. So there was discussions of amending this to restrict that to certain areas in town. And I'll let Councilor Machistero talk about that a little more, because he has the information that he was going to put forward for that.
So I received, and I'm in favor of this. I think they get concessions, and after we had left the meeting, planning board deliberated on this. I'll just read what I've got. This is addressed to President Wondolowski and the entire city council, which we haven't gotten email, but Eric Paul forwarded this to me. This is from George Kalama.
So that's, yeah.
Okay. Dated yesterday, March 10th. A planning board deliberation on the proposed zoning amendments submitted by Councilor Machistero to amend mixed residential business uses, increasing the height requirements in the Central Commercial District and general commercial districts, and requiring multifamily developments in this CC district to be mixed residential business uses. At its March 6th, 2025 meeting, the planning board, after careful consideration and deliberation, took the following votes relative to the proposed amendment submitted by Councilor Machistero, amend mixed residential business uses, increasing the height requirements in the central commercial and general commercial districts, and requiring multifamily developments in the CC district to be mixed residential business uses. Amendment 1. Motion moved by Moschella, seconded by Bledsoe, and voted 5-0 and no tie votes to forward a positive recommendation to the city council on the proposed zoning amendment to amend section 20-14 Central Commercial District CC of the zoning ordinance to require that all multifamily developments along Main Street, Bank Row, and Federal Street within the Central Commercial District be mixed residential business uses. I am good with that. I think it's a great compromise. And I'm hoping that the council feels the same way. And I can use to the map and tell you what that all means.
Can I see that piece of paper, please?
I also have to enlarge it. So basically what this is doing is Main Street would be from, I have to enlarge it again because I am blind as a bat.
High Street.
I know it's not High Street. It's at the Central Commercial District ends on the west, on the east end at Franklin Street, going west towards just beyond Coleraine Street. And Bank Row, entire Bank Row, and on Federal Street, it ends at Pleasant Street. So I think that is a very small, limited area where there's a high concentration of commercial business anyway, and I think this is very fair, and so there you have it.
So that was on Federal Street, was Main Street to which location?
Main Street to Pleasant
Pleasant.
Street. Because beyond there, it changes to semi-residential.
So what this does in intention is it protects those storefronts on Main Street, Bank Row in its entirety, and then Main Street or Federal Street where most of the commercial uses exist right now. Beyond that is mainly residential. And then when we get down to Chapman Street and some of those accessory streets off of Main Street, which are in the central commercial district, it allows those to be residential developments
If they
without
don't
commercial
choose to.
on the first floor, correct? I think, in the meeting, I was in favor of that idea. I think it does what it's intended to do. So I'm in favor, as we'll call it amended, but we'll need probably somebody to make a motion to amend this so we can amend it on the agenda. So we could then get it to the city council office, but we could still have discussion. I'm not
sure if we should do the amendment first or not. I mean, I will say at the risk of discussing the amendment before it's been made, I didn't love and didn't think that I could vote for this as originally written, but I think that the proposed amendment is a great compromise. I completely agree. And I think that it protects what we all want to protect, which is commercial space, without forcing people who might build in places that are not commercially viable to have commercial space that would then sit empty, which doesn't benefit anybody. So, should we go ahead and propose the?
I just want to see if Councilor Minhas has any comments before we go.
Yeah, I support this. I think it does what you're saying, Councilor Healy, that we'll be able to still have a robust commercial space while also trying to increase our housing stock at the same time, which I think is a good balance.
Sorry,
All right.
taking notes and. All right, so does somebody want to make a motion to amend?
I'd like to make a motion to amend according to the recommendation. You want me to recite it again?
Probably good for this.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Do we get a second on that?
Well, why doesn't he?
Okay.
Okay.
Language and then.
Positive recommendation to propose zoning amendment to amend section 200-14 Central Commercial District CC of the zoning ordinance to require that all multifamily developments along Main Street, Bank Row, and Federal Street within the Central Commercial District be mixed residential businesses.
I would second it.
Let's record a second.
You take way better notes than I do in these meetings. You're so good.
Well, I'm trying.
The clerk
Except for whoever-
appreciates it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm basically gonna take a copy of that and then send an email afterwards, just so it's all clear.
I can forward you that.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to discuss the amendment? All right, if nobody wants to discuss it, we will take a roll call vote on the amendment. Get back to my next paper. Counselor Mashpiro,
Yes, of course.
Counselor Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. All right, the next,
Doing, that's the vote on everything as amended, right? We don't have to make a separate vote on the original motion.
no, we don't have to make a separate vote
Check.
on the original motion. Nope. The next item is zoning amendment, section 200-48, mixed residential business uses, subsection A and B. We can get to the right page here.
Yeah. It's just A and B. Okay, so it's out of order.
It is out of order, correct?
That's okay.
So that would be order number FY 25050. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200 zoning, section 48, mixed residential / business uses, subsections A and B, to add language in bold and remove language in the strike through to read as follows. Mixed residential business uses, amend section 200-48, mixed residential business uses of the zoning ordinance to allow first floor dwellings in the mixed use lots by amending subsection A or B so that they read as follows. We're striking out all dwelling units shall be above the first floor, the street level which faces the highest traffic use. 2, first floor dwelling units shall not be allowed along the street with the highest traffic use and shall be ADA compliant. First floor dwelling units shall be located behind commercial spaces. First floor commercial space shall occupy no less than 50% of the first floor square footage. In section B, we're striking out business uses mixed with residential uses on the same floor shall be limited to office use only, and changing it to business uses mixed with residential uses above the first floor shall be limited to office use only.
This
We're going to
was,
open this up for discussion. Go
well,
ahead.
this, this was also, a unanimous, positive recommendation by the planning. And there were no changes as.
Okay.
So just to explain, if you don't understand how it's spelled out here, what this is doing is if there's a building in one of these, in the central commercial, in one of these districts that has mixed use, previously we required commercial on the first floor. Now we're allowing 50% of that first floor that isn't abutting the main road to be used for ADA compliant accessible housing. This was kind of a spin-off of Councilor Garrett's original take at this, and we kind of rethought the idea because we wanted to get not only, the businesses involved and the GBA and see how everybody felt about this. I think this is a good compromise. I would have went 60-40 commercial to residential, but I think 50-50 is kind of a good compromise. It protects businesses, and with the understanding that without housing, businesses don't thrive, and without businesses, housing doesn't thrive, right? They need each other to function in society. So I'm going to open this up to comments to other counselors, and we'll go from there.
Excuse me, Chairperson Healy.
Yep.
Could you clarify, point of clarification, is it ground floor or first floor? Is there a distinguishment
I'm
between
going to
the
pretend
two?
like you didn't ask me that because you're not supposed to be commenting right now, but we will clarify. Maybe one of the counselors can ask that question. We will clarify it.
I'll answer the question, pretending that it was me who asked it. This is the United States. The first floor is the ground floor. You go to Europe, the first floor is the second floor. So yes, it is a ground floor, street level floor. First floor is the street level floor.
Great. Thank you for that clarification.
You bet.
Yeah, my comment on this is I really appreciate particularly the ADA compliance piece. I think that that's a big step forward, and that's exactly the purpose of amending it such that we can have dwelling units on the first floor at all. I think, in addition to just having more housing, but really having accessible housing obviously is a great thing. So I really appreciate that. The 50-50 thing, I have some reservations about, just because I think, I said this the other night in the joint hearing that, the spirit of it, I really appreciate and can totally go for, but I think in practice, I'd love to give ourselves a little more wiggle room because every building is different. Square footage of businesses and apartments and all of that will be different depending on the construction and the space. And so I do worry that saying, 50% as a firm number will kind of box us in a way that we will come to regret later, depending on what development might go in. So I'm still thinking about, potential tweaks to that. I didn't have a chance, unfortunately, before tonight to, come up with better language. So that may be something, that I bring to full council floor next week, just to foreshadow. But yeah, other than that, I think this is fine. To be honest, I don't really understand the limiting to office use only above the first floor. I mean, I guess it's like a noise thing.
Yes.
I mean, there are places where, I don't know, people who live in those buildings often are making the choice to live in a place that they know might be noisier. So I don't know that it's really necessary, but I also don't have a problem with it. I appreciate that people want to live, in a place that they can have some quiet and sleep at night. So I have no issue with that one.
Yeah, oh, well, we are actually, right?
Yeah, no, it's the whole thing together, right?
Yep.
So,
Right, and there's,
yeah. I mean, and I will say, I think that, this too, I wonder how it would benefit from thinking about it specifically in terms of like the primary corridor versus the whole district, like we did with the last one. Again, I don't have language ready to, propose on that, but my primary goal is just, to give us as much flexibility as possible so that we preserve the commercial space and give ourselves as much potential for building housing as we can get. So I think this is a good step in that direction.
I think to do the tweaking it could get very convoluted and
Right, it's a balance that we have to strike. It's
I think this is fair. I mean, if you have a large bill, again, this is all concentrated in a very small part
Right.
of the central commercial district as far as A goes, right? Letter A on this. And if somebody has a big building and they want to, put housing there, I am of the opinion as far as housing goes, it is very important. We are critical as far as I'm concerned. There's a line from The Sun Also Rises, okay?
All right.
Where Tony asks Mike, how did you go bankrupt? And Mike replies, two ways, gradually
And then
and
quickly.
then suddenly.
Suddenly, yep.
And that is the way I interpret that is, you have a crisis and it slowly gets worse until it's critical.
Mhm.
And right now, I think the housing issue in town is critical. We certainly don't have enough, but we cannot. Housing cannot affect commerce. I think commerce is as important as housing because.
You mean it can't affect it, like we shouldn't displace
Right.
commercial space
Right.
for housing? Yeah, I mean, housing can affect commerce. There's a transcription tool in the meeting. I don't know what that means. Okay,
So,
Basically, it's taking notes for us.
something is,
where was I
sorry.
on this? So. The 170 Main Street, I mentioned this the other night, right? That's the whole thing that's going on at 170 Main Street. That's Rural Development LLC that's doing that. That's a misnomer as far as I'm concerned. It's urban development. And if you're gonna have urban development, if you're gonna have people living in a confined space and a lot of people living there, they don't want to have to get in their car and go anywhere. We need the commercial space. And if it's a large building and they need, so 50% of that building needs to be commercial, so be it. That's my opinion. Make it work. Like that fashion show, whatever that fashion show is.
I don't watch enough TV then, or read enough Hemingway.
Well, it's my daughter's thing, so,
I mean, and I will say, I completely agree with you on that. I think that we're totally aligned on that. I want the commercial space to be protected. I just want to make sure that we have the flexibility to make the combination of commercial and residential actually work the best for everybody involved, including the commercial spaces, right? So that's my interest, but I certainly agree with you and not,
so
Displacing
I'm just trying to
commercial
keep
space.
this,
for the sake of residential.
keep
Yeah,
this
I hear you.
simple,
Mhm.
for lack of better words. I mean, if we're gonna start tearing this apart, we can debate this for a very long time. So again, I think that we've made a lot of compromises on these proposed amendments, and I think we should just go forward and, see where the chips fall at full council.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I will say that, considering, 50% is being reserved or allowable to be residential space in a district that is the center of our commerce is a pretty big, negotiation. I think there's a lot more land in Greenfield for building housing than there is for commercial space, right? So I think it's good to set some boundaries. It gives expectations, and it also allows us to sit here and say, okay, we did our part. The businesses in town, we're protecting 50% of that building for you. And everybody has to kind of work together at a 50-50 split. And that's about as 50-50 is about as fair as you can get, right? So I'm gonna support this amendment the way it's written now. And if there are, I will be open to obviously any motions to amend down the road as well. And I look forward to hearing them. Councilor Minhas, did you have anything? I know we kind of ignore the
Yeah.
screen sometimes.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm fasting right now, and the fast opens like soon, so I can't be
Hungry?
eating during the meeting, at least in person. So two things. One, I would like to see if it's possible to add in some language, because I know that we've put in that the developments should be ADA compliant, but I wanted to see if it's possible to um, kind of strengthen that by adding in something that says like uh, to prioritize accessible housing or zones specifically for accessible housing, so that developers know that that is the purpose. This isn't just, hey, come in and you'll make a quick buck, because it's prized commercial space that is now being opened for residential. This is exactly the reason why.
Yeah.
So that's what I would like to do.
That's
And
a very
second,
good
I
point.
was originally why I had supported this whole thing was that there would be some sort of I thought it would be 60-40 with the commercial being prioritized because it is the commercial district. But I guess it seems like most people are okay with 50. I would still argue in favor of 60, but I guess it's just, a number at this point. But I would like to propose some sort of language that clarifies and solidifies that this is specifically for accessible housing.
Thank you. To bring a point up, I believe it was you, Councilor Gordon, at one of our meetings that had some terminology that we were talking, when we were talking about, it was like ADA housing and accessibility compliance, blah, blah. I can't remember the exact words you
I
used.
believe you're correct, and I can't remember.
You can't remember either.
I
I have to go back like 5 meetings to
But,
find it.
right.
There was some language that was about
Can find it.
like ADA design requirements, and that would be, in my opinion, a minor change to this. So
Well, let me ask you this. If we voted it the way it's written
Mhm.
tonight, right?
Mhm.
Because I'd like to see this, if we can, get to council next week.
yeah,
And if you came prepared with that wordage,
Mhm.
we can make that amendment there.
I'd like to see if I can put it in now. I mean, what I had, just a little phrase of putting in to prioritize accessible housing. My only concern was, is that legal?
So yeah, that was gonna be my comment, because I think the language that I had used before was something like, built according to the principles of universal design, right?
Yep.
Which are good principles, and we should definitely advocate for them. My concern about adding language beyond ADA compliant, and I don't know the answer to this, is that, the ADA is very specific, like
Mhm.
there's a law that we can reference
I
to
mean,
know what's
it
compliant and
covers the
not.
whole
Hang on,
thing.
hang on.
It does. Yeah.
Like, right, and it does definitely, that includes accessibility. And then when we get into, principles of universal design and all that, like, we can probably find various references and, different criteria for what that means, which makes it squishier, which makes it harder for people to make sure that they are actually abiding by the ordinance. So I'm happy with it as is, with ADA compliance. I think that that's fine, and it does give us, an agreed reference point for what it means. Even though I completely agree with you, Councilor Minhas, that, what we want to do with this is prioritize accessibility as much as possible.
There is a whole section in the building code about accessibility and ADA compliance and sink heights, fixture heights. So the only thing this doesn't really protect, and there's no way for us to do this, is saying you have to rent to people that need accessibility requirements, right? So that's out of our control. We could just do our best faith effort to make it as appealing to people that need accessible housing and hope that people do the right thing.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Where
so
do we want-
I'll wait for the full council, and if there's like better language that we can come up with that can
Okay.
solidify that. Yep.
Okay, so I think we're ready for a roll call vote on this. Counselor Mastero,
Yes.
Counselor Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas,
I'll abstain on it.
and I am in favor. So that's a yes for me. So that's a 3 yeses, 0 no's, and 1 abstention. Nothing back at fiscal. The next item on the agenda is amend zoning table of dimensional requirements for central commercial and general commercial GC districts. This is order number FY 25-049. The city council moved that be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200 zoning, article 5, dimensional regulations, section 5-2, table of dimensional requirements by replacing 50 with 80 feet for height limit in the central commercial district and replacing 40 feet with 60 feet for height limit in the general commercial district as attached in Exhibit A. So this one was also a unanimous decision by the planning board to support this. We did have some discussions. There was a lot of emails being sent about, doing a feasibility study, that it was even a feasible thing to increase the heights on Main Street. And my comments in the last meeting I'll stand with now is it's really not our job as a government to do those feasibility studies. That falls on the developers that would want to develop that to see if it is a feasible approach to raise any of these buildings on Main Street. They should bear the sole cost of that and not the taxpayers. So I'm in favor of this. I think we support those heights. I think with the courthouse and a lot of other buildings, it wouldn't really make downtown look like New York City, right? It's just with everything needs to grow. And when you have limited land, everything needs to grow up, unfortunately. And I think we're at that point where we need to start looking at up because there isn't around anymore. And there was talks from the fire chief about public safety and concerns, and he had no concerns because the building code is pretty stringent on those higher buildings. So I'm in favor of this, but I'm going to open it up to discussion.
Well, obviously, I'm in favor of it. I know it was brought up by, somebody mentioned, been brought up by a few people. Let's go stories as opposed to feet. I approached that last week. That's up to the architect. You know, you're gonna have 10-foot ceilings, you're gonna have 12-foot ceilings. I mean, so I think at 80 feet, you probably be pushing getting 7 stories. That'd be pushing it, but probably more likely to be 6-story building.
Yeah, most people are looking for 10-foot ceiling heights and you need a couple feet for HVAC and other
Right,
utilities in
between
the building
floors.
between steel and floor.
And a
So
lobby, if there's a lobby, you know, obviously, commercial space on the first floor,
Right.
the ceilings might be higher. And anything over 3 stories, I think at this point, isn't it? That it's gotta be steel construction, because latest codes or over 4.
I think if it's a mixed use building where there's commercial on the first floor, that is the case. I'm not sure.
Right, so this would
about
all be
apartments.
new construction. Most of these buildings downtown are not gonna support an extra 4 stories. As an anecdote, and this is rumor, I don't know this for fact, but I believe it's true. Before Robbie Cohen owned his buildings, his father owned those buildings. And there was a zoning change, I think it was either in the late 50s or early 60s, where any building 4 stories or above had to have sprinklers. And many of these 3-story buildings back then had 4 stories. And old man Cohen decided that it was less expensive for him to eliminate the top floor of some of those buildings than it would be to put sprinklers in. So a lot of those 3-story buildings downtown were once upon a time 4-story buildings, and we had buildings that were higher than 4 stories that had burnt down. I've seen pictures of. So this is not unusual. I think that anything over 80 feet is a bit much for this city. And to answer somebody's question regarding outside of general and central commercial district, I wouldn't want to raise the height. The, you know, semi-residential or anywhere else. I think we limit it to those 2 districts, and which is what I propose. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I would say that, you know, if somebody brought that up in the future, that's something that would have to go to planning board and EDC in the future, and it could be addressed then. I don't want to put language in there just to say, hey, we're not going to allow this in any other district. Because you don't know what 100 years from now looks like, right? So let them address that in the future. And in response to the additional stories, code has changed quite a bit since then, and snow loads have changed, dead loads have changed, live loading requirements have changed. So even if a building could have supported a 4th floor 50 years ago, chances are with the new load criteria, they probably can't do it anymore, right? So,
This is mostly addressed to new construction, I would think, you know,
I would agree.
so.
Anybody else?
I have a comment, but I'll let Councilor Minhas have a turn first. So he's not always the last.
I am
Yes, indeed.
remembering a comment that was made when we had someone from the GBA come in and speak, and they were talking about how when you're considering height changes and increasing the height, a lot of the times what happens is that you'll have 1 or 2 buildings that are new developments just kind of stand out, and it's not really congruent with the rest of the district, and how it just seems off and doesn't really preserve the character of your commercial district. And so that's one of the things I'm thinking about. I'm a little iffy on this because I don't know particularly what backing we have for a specific number, such as 80 feet. But I don't know. I'll see when it comes to the full council.
Yeah, and I could appreciate that comment. I mean, I will say that chances are if one of, you know, this is all in foresight and just thinking about what may happen. If you're going to build a building this tall, it's probably going to be in the backdrop of Main Street. So, you know, from Main Street, you probably wouldn't even see it over the height of the other buildings, unless maybe you're up on the mountain looking down. So, but also I don't think, I really don't think the changes are substantive enough where it would look that out of place personally. You know, you go to Cambridge or any of these cities and there's buildings at various elevations all over the place. I'm in favor of this. So anybody else, Rachel?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying, Counselor Healy. I think, yeah, I am remembering back to that EDC meeting that Counselor Meanhouse is mentioning, and I do remember Amy Kaylin saying, you know, we definitely have a lot of good reason to build up. And if we do make these changes, it'll make some projects feasible that simply aren't feasible right now. And feasible equals projects getting funding that right now couldn't get funding because they can't, you know, build big enough to make it worth it for them to come to Greenfield. I don't think it's a huge difference. I don't think it'll have a big impact on downtown, other than, you know, hopefully bringing more people into the area and creating more housing, which is obviously a positive difference. And yeah, in terms of the feasibility and all of that, it would be on the developer, obviously, to do the engineering studies and make sure that they're building something that will stay up. So it's not something I would want, you know, the city to have to pay for, but, and I will say Director Kaylin at that time, as said, and I know others have said, you know, why not stories instead of feet? The feet thing does seem a little arbitrary, but I think there was a good discussion about it last week at the joint hearing. And the planning board actually, Councilor Munoz, I'm not sure if you were at that meeting. I was remote, so I don't remember everyone that was there, but basically the planning board said that, you know, 80 feet is enough to include whatever floors we might want. So while it might be you know, feel a little bit like a random number, it's a perfectly valid and useful number for what we're trying to accomplish here. So I think this is a great change. I'm in favor.
Not to mention that we have to change the whole table.
Yeah, let's not have to change the whole thing. We don't want to do that.
As far as character goes as well, you have a planning board and a zoning board of appeal that can dictate
Right.
as to what that building's gonna look like. So if it's somebody, the architect who's doing something way out of character, they could, you know, make suggestions and actually implement.
Mhm.
Uh,
And it's not in their interest either to build something that's way out of character generally. I mean, especially if you're building a building that's going to include housing, people want it to feel like it's part of the downtown area that they're, you know, going to be living in. So there are certainly exceptions to that, but I'm not too concerned about that being a big issue.
Well, look at TD Bank. That's ugly building. But
Any other comments? All right, we will take a vote. So this vote is on FY 25-049. Counselor Mastroterro.
yes,
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor Minhas.
Abstain.
And I'm a yes. So, three in favor, one abstention. Moving on.
what is this?
The ADUs, I think.
ADUs.
Everybody's favorite.
The old ADUs. Next is the zoning amendment to section 200-56, accessory dwelling units as required under the Affordable Homes Act signed by the Massachusetts governor. And this is order number FY 25-051. And it says, the city council move that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200 zoning, section 56, accessory dwelling units to add language in bold and remove language in strike through as required to revisions under the Affordable Homes Act signed by Governor Maura Healy relative to accessory dwelling units 760 CMR 71 to read as follows in the attached exhibit A, and further amends that the table of contents and index of code and further non-substantial change to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in the order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. So we did have a pretty good discussion that kind of clarified what this is doing. So this amendment here deals with the Affordable Homes Act, basically putting Greenfield in compliance with the state law. It was the minimal changes we had to do to be in compliance. So it's the floor, it's not the ceiling. We heard about that in previous meetings, but I think it's a great start. I think personally, it addresses everything we need to address. It allows single family houses to have one ADU by right, the rest would be by special permit. And it also prohibits multifamily dwellings from having ADUs without a special permit, which would require site plan review. So a lot of things that people were worried about are handled under this. And in my opinion, if you own a single family house in Greenfield and you want to build an ADU for your parents or your brother who you don't want living right next to you in your house, so it's detached, maybe he's in your backyard, so be it, right? It's your land and you should be able to do what you want with it to a certain respect. And on top of that, I think you have to look at location and, you know, if you're going to do this in precinct 9 where I live, we're all on septic systems. So you're adding bathrooms, you're investing money to expand your leach fields and possibly make your storage chambers larger, you know, so it isn't the most cheapest alternative. So do I think that's going to stop people from building if they really want to? No, but I think it is going to create some sort of aspect that keeps it in control. Yeah, so I've said enough. Anybody else want to say anything?
I just had a question about striking through the two-family part. Because my understanding is that this is just to bring us into compliance, but that piece of it, I wasn't sure how that was related to compliance with the Affordable Homes Act.
Yes.
So you know,
I do. So it's very specific
okay,
that it only complies for single family houses.
okay,
And we only did it for single family houses. This protects single ADUs in single family homes. So once you get into multifamily, we had,
So
that's the next one. We had to create the new one saying it's an unprotected
Got it.
ADU. So
got it.
we're not saying it's not allowed. We're just saying it requires a special permit because it's unprotected. So protected ADUs are single family ADUs.
So that's why the language had to change.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I am in support of us being in compliance with the new state law. So I will be supporting this.
I'll be supporting this.
Counselor Minhas, you have anything?
Yeah. So I think it's a good thing we are changing our ordinances and laws to be in accordance with the state requirements. My only thing I think it's just a fundamental disagreement with what I feel like the reason the vast majority of ADUs are being built is for. I think it's a way for developers to make a quick buck. I don't think it's people who own their homes that are trying to make space for family members or anything like that. Otherwise, it would have this would have clarified and included, owner occupied, but it doesn't. And there's a whole barrage of information online that you can follow, which talks about how ADUs are a very financially lucrative way for developers to make the most amount of money in the smallest amount of space. However, I do think that there are some exceptions where there might actually be people who want to house members of their family or something like that. Now, who amongst like the local population has that much money to build an ADU? I don't know. But one of the things I would like to push for is if we limit the number of ADUs that we can have per lot. And I would like that to stay at one, so that there's quality of life and space restrictions are not only, we're not just meeting the bare minimum, but it's rather maximizing the quality of life for a person who's living in an ADU. And it's not just that there's some giant realtor company who's just cramming people into a small confined space just because they can, and pocketing all those rents, and those people who just can't find other places to live, they're just there because they can't find anything else.
Can I say something
Absolutely.
in response to that? Yeah, I appreciate where you're coming from on that, Councilor Minhas. I will say that my understanding from looking at data on ADUs is that not a lot of them actually get built. Like in the places that have had more flexibility around them in Massachusetts and elsewhere in the last decade or so. And for better and for worse, depending on your perspective, it's actually unlikely that a lot of them will get built, especially in a place like Greenfield. And in more rural areas, which technically we are, even if some parts of us feel urban. Most ADUs actually really are, according to all the data I've looked at, built by the homeowner for often a family member, if that family member passes away, they might rent it out or whatever. But I do think that there are some fears that I've been hearing around ADUs that just aren't supported by the data, which doesn't make the fear any less real or valid. But I just want to say that, having looked into this a fair amount, because this is such a controversial issue, I am not concerned about a big rush of developers trying to build ADUs, or even, and frankly, especially with construction costs being what they are and heading where they are. I think we'll actually be lucky if, even a few ADUs are built in Greenfield after we change this. So.
Yeah, I appreciate both sentiments here. I think you make some valid points there. If that was the case, it's still creating housing for rent, which I think is still a good thing. We need housing. On top of that, I think it allows people, if maybe they couldn't afford, a developer comes in and builds a house with a detached ADU on the property and puts it on the market, and I buy it, and my mortgage is $2,500 a month, and I might only be able to cover 2,200 of that. And now I have the capability to rent it to a tenant and be able to cover my mortgage by renting that out. It helps make that house more affordable for other people down the road. So, we won't know until it's tried out, but I think it's a step in the right direction to allow people to get into housing where we desperately need it. So that's my opinion. Any other comments, and we'll take a vote on it?
I'm good. I'm good with it.
All right, so we're gonna do a roll call vote. And this is for FY 25-051, Counselor Mastrotero.
Yeah.
Counselor Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas,
No.
and I am a yes. So that's 3 yeses, 1 no. Okay, moving on to our last item on the agenda. Zoning amendments of section 200-61 site plan review and approval, subsection B, as required under the Affordable Homes Act signed by the Massachusetts governor. So this is order number FY 25-42, and it states, the city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200 zoning, section 61 site plan review and approval, subsection B, projects requiring site plans, to add the language in bold and remove the language in strike through as required revisions under the Affordable Homes Act signed by Governors Moore, Healy relative to accessory dwelling units 760 CMR 71 to read as follows. Site plan review and approval. Projects requiring site plans, the creation, expansion, substantial alteration, or change in use of the following uses shall require site plan review and approval. All uses requiring a special permit, any businesses, commercial, industrial, or institutional uses, except home occupations not requiring a special permit. Any residential use of strike through 2, change to 3 or more units, including subdivisions. Any site containing more than one principal use. And section 5, creation of an unprotected accessory dwelling unit, subsection 5, added by the city council on May 20th, 2020. So this is that second section that kind of deals with unprotected ADUs as defined by the new Mass General Law, right? And their definitions are pretty clear. So they're not saying you can't build them, but you need a special permit to build them. But to get back into kind of thinking about this, a lot of people have concerns about a lot of houses popping up on lots, and we talked about this in previous meetings with our zoning requirements, setbacks, open space. If you have a septic, you can't build within a certain distance of it, new housing anyways. So there's a lot of restrictions in place that would prohibit three ADUs showing up on a 0.25 acre parcel, right? So, I'm in favor of this. One, it's required by law, and two, I think the planning board did a good job making sure we were doing everything we needed to do. But I'm gonna open it up to comments from other counselors.
Well, I'm in favor of it specifically because it's required by law. And the rest is what difference does it make, quite frankly? So again, I don't see people building multiple ADUs on properties, on their own property, so. And if they want to, they're gonna have to go through a lot of rigmarole, so. This is all good with me, so.
The only other thing that's kind of hidden in this is the section 3, which is striking out 2 and adding 3 for more units in a subdivision, including subdivisions. So basically, previously, if you were building a 2-family, you required a special permit. Now it's by right. It's 3 families or more, 3 units or more that would require special permit. And I think that's a step in the right direction as well. I think being able to build a duplex and having that second space for rent or for a family member is very important. So,
And that piece is required by the AHA
yeah.
too, right? So, yeah, I completely agree.
All right. Any other comments? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote then. Counselor Mastrocello.
Yeah.
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor Minhas.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. So that's great. Next on the agenda is discussion, and we had no discussion for tonight, so I'm not going to open that conflict or the open meeting law stuff that we all disagree on anyways. And then the next meeting is Tuesday, April 8th, 2025, 6 p.m. City Hall. Second floor Zoom or hybrid unless otherwise posted. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Becky? Right. We're going to go to a roll call vote. Counselor Mastrocello.
Yes.
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor Minhas.
Yes, I want to finish my food. Thank you guys.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.